The VCT offseason is nearing its end. We are less than a month away from the start of the 2025 season, with all teams in all 4 leagues gearing up for what should be a very solid season of professional Valorant. In a previous video, we talked about the Americas region and what the expectations are for each team, and now we are doing that for the EMEA region. Looking at all 12 teams in the league, what their offseason moves and what they've done since the end of last season means for their upcoming season, and where both the fan base and the organizations see them going. So this is the board we have today. We have all the team logos right below me, and the categories that we have today are at the very top. We have international contenders, so teams that should be not only making international tournaments but also contending to win them, so placing very high. Then we have qualify for internationals, so being able to get there but not necessarily be favorites. Then we have good in region, pretty self-explanatory, and then we have mid, and then we have bad. Obviously no team is expecting, at least from an organization perspective, they shouldn't be expecting to be either mid or bad, but this is more of where I see them and where I think fans are seeing them and just viewers in general. And we will be starting from the top right, which means we are starting with Navi. Now Navi basically rebuilt their entire roster. They kept 2 players from their previous one in both Angel and Xiao. What they ended up bringing in from the offseason is a player named Ruxic, Hero, as well as Koala Noob. Hero previously played on Fnatic last year when Leo had to step away from the team, and he filled that role quite well, but Fnatic decided to move on from him, and he has found a home on Navi. And Koala Noob comes over from the North American Tier 2 roster in M80, a team that just could not win that grand finals. And Ruxic is a Turkish player who comes from Tier 2. He was playing for a team called Fut Esports. We haven't seen this Navi roster play in the offseason yet. They haven't attended any tournaments, but with the new players that they brought in, at least on paper, they're pretty good. But is it better than what they had last season with that roster that had been together since 2022? They did fall short of expectations. They at least wanted to be attending internationals and competing for the trophy, but they just could not get past the single elimination playoff rounds that saw them out of both playoff brackets, and they could not make it through during the kickoff bracket either. 3 separate single elimination matches. You have to come up big in those moments, but does that say that the roster they had was bad? No, but I do think it was time for a change in that roster. Overall, with Navi's new roster, I think they are going to be competitive, so I think there's a decent chance we see them at least one international, especially with how wide open EMEA is. But there are only so many spots, so maybe I'll move them up later in the video, but for now I'm going to put them in good in region, because I think there's something good here, but I'm going to have to see it more, or see it at all, before I really see them as contenders or really being able to be top 2, 3, and 4 in the region to be able to make it to these international tournaments. Moving on, we have Fnatic, a team that did not have the year that they wanted to last year after they won back-to-back tournaments the year prior in 2023, missing out on the first international of the year in Masters Madrid, and then not having a great performance at Shanghai, then having a decent performance at Champs, but nothing to really write home about. But in the offseason, they lost their best player in Durka, a player that I think is one of the best to ever play the game. So they bring in Kayak, previously of Apeks, and in terms of European duelist players that you could look at from Tier 2, he was probably one of the better pickups. However, he does seem to have a bit of a problem on land. It seems like he gets the jitters and, has had some concerning performances on land, but that's something that you can work out. They also had the recent news that they brought in Crashies to be Leo's replacement until he's ready to go. So that means Leo was probably out for a while, because I don't think you bring in Crashies if you think that Leo's going to come back soon. But it is pretty late in the offseason to be making a change like this, so maybe it ends up working out for Fnatic. I do really like Crashies. He is a great player, but will he, put this team in the international contenders category? I would say no, but I do think that they are at least good enough to be qualifying for internationals. We saw them at 2 out of 3 last year. I think we'll probably see that again, but in terms of, being able to do what they did back in 2023, I just don't see it. Maybe their fans feel that way, but I'm personally not expecting that, and I don't know if the org is either, but hey, we will see. Moving on, we have the newest Ascension team in the VCT EMEA League, and that is Apeks. A team that narrowly missed out on being the Ascension team a year prior, but lost to Gentlemates in the grand finals of the Ascension tournament, so they ended up running it back and ended up making there. But they did lose a lot of core pieces in the offseason. They lost their assistant coach in Desmo, and they also lost 2 players in Soulcast and Kayak. Soulcast is a solid player. You can replace that at the very least. Kayak, that is kind of a bit big loss with their duelist position. However, they do have a new coach in Odaris making his way over from North America on the MXS roster. And they also got a pretty big fish in the offseason by picking up Fluorescent, previously of Shopify Rebellion in the game changer scene of the VCT. And she has been one of, if not the best player in the game changer scene for quite some time now. So we'll see how her play translates to the regular VCT. Obviously, she'll be playing a lot different opponents than she was in Game Changers, so we'll see how her game translates, but I do have a lot of confidence in her. But they also don't have a fifth right now, so I think based off of not really having a full roster right now, Fluorescent, while I do have confidence, is definitely a question mark, and the rest of the roster, you know, is it something that you really see doing really well? I think what I'll do is I'll put them next to Navi. I'll put them in the good in region. I think, you know, picking up the player that they did in Fluorescent, I think you do expect to at least be a good team, but I don't know if they're going to qualify for internationals, but maybe that'll be dependent on their fifth. We will see. They can still do a second import because Game Changers players don't count for the whole import rule where you can only have one, and they were teasing that they're going to pick up another North American player. While that might have been a bit to talk about their coach, Odaris, but you know, I don't know. It does kind of seem like they're going to pick up a new player. Moving on, we are going to be talking about BBL Esports, one of the Turkish teams in the EMEA region. BBL opted for nearly a full rebuild by bringing in 4 new players, including Yampi, Profex, Social Blee, and Chiwa. So Loon is the only player that they still have left from last year's roster. And what they've done in the offseason, while they haven't looked like overly fantastic or anything, they've looked pretty decent. Being able to beat some opponents such as Giantx in offseason events, doing pretty decent at the Red Bull Homeground event, but you know, nothing too exciting. While I don't think this roster is anything to write home about, and I don't think that they're going to be qualifying for internationals, I don't think it's out of this world that they're going to be good in region. Maybe the expectations should be a bit lower, and I should maybe put them in mid to bad, but I think at the very least, I think I'll put them in mid for now, but I can see them bumping themselves up. They do have a decent roster. I could see them being good in region, but I think mid is where I'm going to put them just because there are just so many good teams in EMEA, and you know, it's definitely a wide open region, but there still are some pretty top heavy talent there. Moving on, we have Karmine Corp. Now with the roster that they've built, and you know, while the offseason has been mixed for them, at least, this is definitely one of the biggest question marks when it comes to the EMEA region. They did bring in Sada coming over from Americas, one of the most storied IGLs in Valorant to date, you know, winning the champions and getting very close to winning other tournaments. They kept Martine from last year. They bring in Suigetsu from Navi, great pickup in my opinion. They also bring in Elite from BBL, who had a pretty good year on a pretty bad team, and they also bring in Avez, an Egyptian tier 2 player. In the offseason, in the 4 events that they've played, they've only been able to beat one team, and that's Koi, which is twice, beating them at their own event as well as Koi's own event in KoiCon. So, I mean, most of these are show matches. In the Red Bull Homeground event, they did not do very well, but they were choosing maps that they hadn't practiced yet, so I guess they just wanted more practice. I don't know. It was a weird decision. But either way, with the roster that they've built, I don't know where they're going to end up being, but I think at least the expectations are just from what they've built here, they want to be qualifying, and I think that they have the ability to do it. Will they be winning them? I don't know. I still don't know if this team has enough, you know, top of the line, like superstar talent that can win a tournament, but they really want to make it to Paris for obvious reasons. They are a French organization, and I do think that they have the ability to do that. So I'll be putting them in that category next to Fnatic. Moving on, we have Koi, a team that isn't doing what they did the previous offseason, which was just straight up not build a roster until 2 weeks before the season started. They actually built together what I think on paper looks at least pretty decent here. They did what most European teams did and brought in an NA import, that is Flya, previously of MXS. Pretty solid choice for IGL there. Flya definitely has shown a lot of potential. They also bring in Soulcast, previously of Apeks and Team Liquid, as well as a player named Filu. Looks like he's going to be their duelist player, and you know, we'll see how he does. We haven't gotten a huge sample size from him yet. But overall, I think they've built something that might bring them out of the basement this year. They've only played Karmine Corp in the offseason. They lost both of those matches as I talked about, but those were best of ones. So I think at the very least, Koi has at least built something that can be good in the region, but you know, are the expectations there? While I would like to see them out of the basement, I think I gotta put them in the same category as BBL. I feel like these teams, while they've made improvements, they still might find themselves in the mid category. That's kind of where I'm expecting them to be. But I at least don't think either of these teams are going to be bad, which they were last year. Moving on, we have Team Heretics, a team that got very close to winning 2 internationals last year, making it to the grand finals of the Masters Shanghai as well as champs in Seoul. So I think there is no other place to put them than right in the international contenders category. So about those white boxes that are popping up, that's a Photoshop glitch. But yeah, Heretics are a very good team. They're incredibly talented. Yes, they lost to Gentlemates in an off-season event. I don't really care about that. They didn't make any changes. They have a very talented young core who have great chemistry with one another. You of course have the brother buff with Mini Boo and Boo, 2 players that are very talented, and players like Woot, Rians, and Benji Fishy should continue to improve off of what was already a very good season for them. I am expecting this team to win an international this year. They got very close last time, and I think that they definitely, especially with how the meta is now, I think that they will thrive. Really hoping they don't crash and burn. I really think this team is just incredibly talented, and I think they're going to stay up there as contenders. Moving on, we have Fut Esports, a team that only made one change during the offseason, and that was swapping out CNET for a player named Zeus. While CNET is still a good player, he's been around Valorant since the inception of it. I do think that this is a fine replacement. Zeus seems to be fitting in well with the roster, and this team was able to make it to internationals last year, making it to both Shanghai and Champions. So they've proven that they have the ability to make it to internationals. They just haven't had a ton of impact at them. So I think this is the year where they hope to change that and to actually be in the international contenders category. Would I personally put them there? I do not think so. I think I'm going to put them in qualify for internationals, but not in the contenders. I still don't think that their roster is good enough to win a trophy, but it is good enough to get them there. And hey, I would like to see them change it. It'd be really cool if Turkey, proves that they are one of the best talent pools in Valorant right now, because that is the talk of the town. And Fut looks like they're going to continue to be the best Turkish team and one of the best teams in EMEA. I could very easily see them stealing a spot from a Karmine Corp, a Fnatic, a Navi, any of those number of teams. Moving on, we have Team Liquid, a team that is hoping to get itself out of the pool of mediocrity that they were in last year. After a 2023 with quite a lot of ups and downs, they were hoping 2024 could build off of that, but that was not the case. They did not end up being very competitive within their own region, not qualifying for a single international. So they kick out 3 players in Yampi, Enzo, and Mystic, and they've been in 3 new players in Patatek, Kamek, and Camo. Camo is, of course, the controversial one. I'm not going to be getting into that, but is this new roster better than last year? I think it definitely has the potential to. There is a lot of hope around Patatek, but I do kind of fear that what we saw from Patatek at Shanghai is kind of a one and done. Don't get me wrong, he's a talented player, but the way he was playing in that tournament is not a sustainable pace, and I don't know if, and we didn't see that from him in previous iterations of that Team Heretics roster. So for him, I could see it going either way. It's kind of a flip of a coin in my opinion. But I think overall, Team Liquid should at least be in the good in region category. I could see them being in these 2 ones, but I think with still the talent that they have in Nats, maybe Kaiko has a good season and the rest of the roster fits in well. It is possible for them. I'm not seeing a huge improvement, but at least a slight improvement. Now for this last row, I'm going to be starting from the left side, which means we're talking about Giantx, a team that was in that kind of pool of mediocrity in the EMEA region last year, where all teams aside from, the top dogs seem to just be kind of all mid. The roster that they've brought in does seem pretty solid. They have players like Cloud and Purpo who were on the team last year. They bring in Thomas Z, previously of Karmine Corp. That's a pretty decent pickup. I thought he had an okay year. He kind of fell off at the end of it, but that he should be able to find some consistency. They also bring in Runner, previously of Team Vitality, who finds himself outside of that roster after not a bad year, but they bring in this insane amount of talent into Team Vitality, so he finds himself on the outside of it. So he could be a pretty good addition, as well as Westside, a player that was playing on a tier 2 team called Fut Esports and also participated in Giantx's Game Changers roster. So he might end up being a pretty good pickup for them. He's looked good in the off-season event so far. So overall, I don't see this team as bad. I don't think they're going to be in the basement, but I mean, somebody has to. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put them in the good in region. I think they're going to get out of this range that they've been in last season, and hopefully they can be in the good in region spot. Moving on, we have Gentlemates, a team that came in through the Ascension program in 2023. In 2024, they opted to keep the roster that won them that Ascension tournament to, reward them for their hard work. Unfortunately, it did not go as planned for them. They did not make much of an impact. They were kind of just irrelevant. So they ended up going for pretty much a full rebuild, bringing in players like Robbie BK, Mini, Zipan, and Click. Zipan being the only player that played in Tier 1 Valorant last year. The rest are from Tier 2 teams. But those other 3 players were on some pretty solid Tier 2 teams, such as Mini, who was on the Go Next Esports team. We've only seen them play in one offseason event so far, and that was a show match against Team Heretics. That actually happened on the day that I'm filming this. But do I think that them winning that means that they're better than Heretics? No, I do not think that. They did look good in that match for sure, but do I see them being good for the rest of the season? No, not really. I'm sorry. I think I'm just going to put them down here. They did look good, and maybe if I see them play more, that will change my mind. But I'm not going to be basing my opinions off of one match. I'm looking at it from an on-paper perspective, and there's something here for sure. But again, I think they're going to be in that kind of mid category. There's just so much talent above them. Moving on, we have Team Vitality, a team that brought in 2 huge talents in the offseason, bringing in Durka, previously of Fnatic, and as I said previously in the video, one of the best players to ever play the game, as well as Les, previously of Loud, another player that has a very storied career in Valorant so far. So 2 really talented players, and you kept your main talents from last year. Safe, Trek, and Kicks are all still here. Runner did find himself on the way out, and now Safe is the IGL, which I think is the biggest question mark when it comes to this team. Apparently he does have experience in it, but I think to win an international tournament, you have to have an elite IGL. Can Safe do that? We'll see. However, which is what they brought in. We haven't seen them play in the offseason yet, but just based off of on paper alone, they have to be one of the international contenders. There's just so much talent on this team. There is a chance that it crashes and burn and we see a Energy 2024 situation, but I will place my bet on that not happening. I think the roles are kind of in question right now, especially with Safe both IGLing and not on Duelist anymore. But hey, they should be able to outshoot all their problems. I think they'll be okay, and I think that they should at least get close to winning a trophy next year. I'm gonna do one more thing here. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put BBL where Team Liquid is. I do think BBL have shown enough to make me think that they're gonna be good in the region, and with Liquid. As I think about it more, the less it excites me. So that's what I'm gonna do. Maybe one of these teams ends up in the bad category. I don't know which team, because again, it felt like every team tried to improve. No team is expecting to be bad, but somebody is gonna have to be in that bottom row once the season gets rolling. But I'm trying to give as much benefit of the doubt as I possibly can, but my comment section will still get mad at me either way. Anyways, that'll do it for today. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think of my list. Where would you put all these teams? Please click like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next one. Bye.